Hello and welcome to the Raw Preview. I'm Michael Sidgwick, joined by Adam Nicholas and Michael Hamflett to preview the events of tonight's WWE Monday Night Raw. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. We preview and review Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, pay-per-views. We hold wrestler interviews, roundtable discussions, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WhatCulture. Now, gents, we are gathered here today for literally the only time that catchphrase has ever made an iota of sense. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Who's crashing the wedding?
Oh, nobody. It's a WWE wedding. It'll be totally fine and it'll go without a hitch. Who's crashing the wedding, though, for real?
Triple H, Lana asleep in a car. We go again.
Well, let's rule out Rusev because we have to? Because here's the thing. Rusev, in the build-up to TLC, was very adamant that he couldn't care less about Lana. Yeah. So he seems to not care. In addition, he was defeated, fairly comprehensively by Lashley on the night. So in my opinion, if he comes to interrupt the wedding, he'll look like a bit of a dick. Well, Do you not think? It's a baby face.
A little bit. So he said, by what they're trying to do there is him not selling the wedding as a way to excuse not selling the loss. Because the loss was the bad wrestling booking, wasn't it? And the wedding thing was like, I don't care, I want a shot of her. This only leaves us with Mike Kanellis in a misguided attempt to get back at Maria by like taking out Lana. Thinking, what's going on? Like, because Paul Heyman's finally bringing his two babies together. Oh, yeah. It's got to be Rusev because one of the best things they've done with him in terms of actually keeping him over in this angle is big weapons gestures. So there's going to be plenty of props for him to play with and a mad, like he's even built up his own gimmick with a tuxedo t-shirt because he's been wearing every other stupid American pop culture t-shirt in the run up to this. So he's going to come out with that daft little rose eye.
So Mr. Peanut Butter Tux, basically, is what's happening.
So it's got to be him, but they've got to right around the situation they set up last week when he was like loving the single life alongside No Way Jose.
It's going to be Rusev, isn't it? It's going to be, despite all of the other things pointing towards the complete opposite of this. Is there going to be a cake? Probably going to be a cake involved. Is someone going to go through the cake? Of course they're going to go through it. Is it probably going to be Lana? And is it going to be Rusev doing it to her? Probably.
If not Rusev, can I have a left of field suggestion from both of you, please?
What beyond Mike Kanellis? Well, can we go back to Mike Kanellis? Or can we go
do whatever you want.
What about
it's December?
What about a different Rusev?
Almost January.
Where like the divorce was finalised, but then he married her again in a car. So he did do I'll use my Triple H.
You really like this angle,
but he took her to Vegas and he married her again just to get one over on Big Bobo. So I'll say Rusev, but like a Rusev that was out after the No Way Jose thing. Like he had a few drinks, had a bit too much.
Can Lana be in on this to make it exponentially less problematic?
Has she been in on any aspect of a relationship with Rusev according to the scripting? Like, was she able to say no to the sex he was forcing upon her as to the reason why she left him in the first place? That's not been an issue for them.
True. Left of field choice, that's decidedly less problematic, please.
I mean, I can't go down the car route. Like, I think that's just you. I'd like it on record. It's just him again.
I've got no part in it.
No. I'm just pointing at him. Just him. This one here.
Guys, it was Triple H, wasn't it?
A left field one. An interruption.
Like a new, like
something like a brand new storyline like to interfere and interrupt.
Instigating a brand new storyline.
No Way Jose.
Kane's got a bit of a habit when it comes to weddings, hasn't he? He has. What if he just pops in? He's just like, now, I realise I've got some mayoral duties here, but
that's a thumbnail sorted.
I'm also a vicar. We are gathered here today. What if it's Wilborn?
He has been.
He has been.
By his absence.
He hasn't been around, you know.
He's been accused of marrying a foreign woman before.
Yeah, this is true. That's very true. And he's probably, I mean, his one isn't even foreign, but she's still probably got more of an accent than what Lana has.
Indeed. Aiden English.
Aiden English. No, there's a long term.
Milwaukee. Do you think they remember this?
Look at you. We swap seats. What is this?
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's Rusev. They could not even like you've gone like a year and a half back. They're not even going to go 7 days back. It's going to be Rusev.
Indeed. Right. Okay. Well, away from the wedding, which, by the way, I've said this before and I'll say it again. If they screw up Matt Riddle, game's gone. It's completely irrevocably broken. If they can't book an entertaining wedding, then something's wrong. They're better at this than babyface title runs.
This will be class, I think. It'll be really fun.
Genuinely, earnestly expecting something great. And if I've got a left of field suggestion for a brand new feud, give Cedric Alexander something sports entertainment-y to do, just to prove that he can actually do it. Because he wasn't really given a fair crack of the old whip, I don't think.
He's been a caretaker, so he might as well be like a justice of the peace or whatever like authority figure they have to do a marriage. He can smile and wave at the end like he did even when he lost a match.
Are you saying he's a master of disguise?
Go
Are you
on.
saying he could do the old Eric Bischoff bit of 2002? You reckon?
Did I just give myself 3 more minutes on Raw?
Right. Well, the wedding is all that literally anybody cares about, so we can say anything now. Delving into the guts of Raw, just like Bobby Lashley will be delving into the guts on his wedding night if it goes according to plan. I am very sorry. There is actually something earnestly good and not soap opera bollocks, which will be very perversely good on tonight's Raw. There is a rematch scheduled between Buddy Murphy and Aleister Black from TLC. Who do you think is going to win? Will it matter? And how good can this possibly be in front of, presumably, another dead Raw crowd?
Buddy Murphy, no, it'll be pretty good. So they'll go 50-50 because they'll set up the rubber match between the two. But I quite like this angle in spite of itself. I really like them using the taped Raw to put those two squashes back to back because they were both really entertaining. And Black and Murphy both have that immediate chemistry. You could feel it on the pay-per-view. It's lovely when two wrestlers come together and just straight away they gel.
All right, Mr. T.
And all the big boy popping spots don't feel quite as, I don't know, like they don't feel quite as wasted. Like Black especially, I think because of this stupid cupboard crack that they've given him this year, like a lot of his stuff when he actually comes out and wrestles feels a bit lost. Like he's the guy that should be picking fights and then being entertaining rather than having the other guy steal his matches. With Buddy Murphy, like it doesn't feel like that again. They both feel better for fighting each other. And I've got quite high hopes for this one.
I think of all the times they both wanted to be on TV, obviously Buddy Murphy's been quite vocal on social media. I mean, he looked like he was going somewhere, similar to what you mean about Cedric Alexander, and then it just didn't happen. So to see them two actually out there getting to wrestle frequently and putting on good matches, let's be fair, then as much as I know WWE loves doing a thing over and over again, this is one of those where you're not going to mind really if they get to keep doing it forever. I don't know who wins it though, that's the thing. I don't know who comes out with this one on top because Aleister Black seems to me like he would make the sense because they've obviously put loads of time into the promo packages and the cupboard, of course. but Buddy Murphy probably needs it too, let's be honest.
I would like to see Aleister Black win decisively after a total banger of a 15-minute match. I think it's almost guaranteed to be a banger. And hopefully, I'd like to think that the fans in attendance will have realised, hang on, they had a great match at TLC. This should probably be great too. So let's receive it enthusiastically from minute 1. Because I think it was only really in like minute 11 or 12 that they finally got on board at TLC. They've genuinely got an opportunity here, I think, to wrestle the best main roster TV match of the year if afforded sufficient time. I'd love to see it. I would also love to see Aleister Black emerge potentially going into a much bigger role going forward. On the back of that, let's segue to my next talking point. With the Royal Rumble on the horizon, will anybody emerge as a challenger to Brock Lesnar's WWE title? And could it, in fact, be Aleister Black for that? Well, you're a loser, but it was a good match, Rob.
It's a free hit, isn't it?
Yes.
We'll talk about the Royal Rumble title match being a free hit, so you can throw it up into anybody. Even as daft a suggestion as someone like a Cedric Alexander, like could just put himself out there even before Brock banters him off in a couple of minutes. The only one that leaps out at the moment, and this is just because of the promo he cut last week, exactly 12 months after he cut the same promo, is Drew McIntyre. So the whole thing about 2020 being his year, that might not be true. And that
Probably
might
not.
And that might not be something the booking team sticks with because he did say on December 31st last
2019.
year. However, immediate response being Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble is almost them actually proving themselves true. You know, as them saying, right, all right, we allowed Drew to say this, and now we're going to give him the match to back it up. He's ready. You know what I mean? He can be inserted straight into that. And if anything, the less he does, the more realistic an opponent he becomes to Brock. The more feuds he gets trapped in rather than things that are actually to do with his own life, the less he looks like a suitable opponent. Him right now, with nothing going on, is probably the best Drew you're going to get.
Yes.
I think the longer they don't pull the trigger on a match with Drew and Brock, the worse it gets. Because as we say, he keeps getting put into that slot where it's not about him. Whatever's going on, he's always an extra, the side guy or whatever. He's on about making it his year. I mean, that's got to be the way to start it, surely. We've seen plenty of good matches with Brock where it's a littler guy, smaller guy. Drew is arguably the most perfect. I mean, we thought Braun was going to be the guy when he was flying high. It didn't work out. The matches between Brock and Braun didn't really hit the heights. Yeah, didn't quite
He
tick the
just
box.
couldn't give a toss, could he, Brock?
Nah.
He just didn't want to put
That's
him
the
over,
thing.
did he?
It didn't happen, and obviously that was even worse. That triple threat with Kane, man. I mean, that's
Jesus
just when you
Christ.
thought you got rid of that, he drags it back up. But let's be honest, if Drew McIntyre could have that match with Brock and put on an absolute banger, then you've got to think that's how to get Vince's attention. And if Brock comes in and goes, like wrestling that guy, that can't hurt him at all.
The popper, if they want it, is Ricochet as well.
Yes.
Again, another guy that you can take out of nothing rather than something, because when he's involved in something, it actually makes him more boring. Like Ricochet is the guy that you just need to be reminded every now and then is a freak of nature. And there's no way that with 7 or 8 minutes of the Royal Rumble, they don't like near steal the show.
Indeed. In a way, because they've actually built him via a program, which is quite novel for WWE, I would like to see Aleister Black get transitioned into the Lesnar program. So I think a defeat is inevitable. He could probably recover from it, even though he has been built as this sort of like unbeatable destroyer, Dutch destroyer, of course, according to Mauro Ronaldo. But the thing about Aleister Black, and it's so easy when you talk about the hidden room, the nonsensical, overlong promos, that they've actually done quietly a very good job of putting over the Black Mass as a finisher. And I think that could really inform the drama of a Lesnar match, because he's got a weapon that can be struck from a standing position against anybody that could be potentially like a match decider. So I think it's an intriguing dynamic with his finish. Whether they go that route, I don't know. But if this is booked by like any other wrestling company, like literally any other wrestling company, you'd look at something like Aleister Black versus Buddy Murphy and think, oh, well, they've got plans for him. And maybe that plan might involve like a title shot or something like that. But it just can't be said with WWE, can it? They could just as easily go with Ricochet, who's been on main event doing very much of nothing.
To Black, like, wasn't the pick a fight stuff Paul Heyman's baby? Because nobody else would dare take credit for that unless you've got credibility like Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
That was his thing, wasn't it? So whenever you hear that Paul Heyman's got investment in a guy, it immediately makes you think, well, he'd be happy to work with him against Brock Lesnar. We all remember that time he got Finn Balor over like that in one night just to build up to that match again. So there's certainly something there that would say, well, if you give Heyman a microphone in 1 week after Aleister Black wins a program against Buddy Murphy, he's going to be ready for it, isn't it?
And I'm kind of in love, since you mentioned this match, the idea of, imagine opening that match, you know, you've got Black's theatrics coming down, Brock turns up, he's all kind of like, look at this guy, and literally where go, bang, Black Mass. Not saying he wins the match, but hits him, and you're like when Goldberg got him at Survivor Series, that massive shock factor that maybe you're not going to get anyone else, because the Black Mass it's got to be one of the most over finishers at the moment. Like,
yes.
The impact it has, the suddenness of it, like there's without that, it would be a lot worse for Aleister Black right now, put it that way.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. Now, right, the next sort of big storyline that's bubbling on Raw at present is the feud between Becky Lynch and Asuka, which I think was built towards superbly with Becky Lynch's sort of like really guarded sit-down interview where she acknowledged that someone's got a number. She feels an almost sense of guilt that she hasn't yet paid that debt because she's in Peaky Blinders now, apparently. My issue now is that she's sold me on that match, which didn't really need to be sold, on the strength of like a great actual babyface promo in which she endeared herself to people. But the problem for me with WWE's sports entertainment scripting is that it doesn't really figure someone like Asuka, who isn't very fluent, into the mix. How do they advance this? Did they get physical tonight?
They do nothing. This is a perfect example of one of those stories that has peaked.
Have we swapped?
I was literally just thinking, you two are the wrong guy.
I thought last week's live version of that taped promo where she screamed Japanese, it was as good as the taped one. They've reached a brilliant peak in a storyline that is frankly amazing. They've got back to 12 months later. It's the one angle that we talked about as soon as she'd won
Accidental
the title.
Gado.
Of course, you know, like this is the one thing that we were waiting for them to revisit, and they finally have at the perfect time. 12 months on, it's almost like the last thing she has to prove before she starts her new road to WrestleMania as champion. It's brilliant. So they just don't need to do any more. I would like to see, I think you're right about the Asuka promo situation. If she's going to be in singles matches while Kairi Sane recovers, I think what they can do now is have them have those competitive squashes backed against vignettes of them preparing for the match. I think of The Rock and Brock Lesnar and that fabulous series where they didn't really interact with each other, but you saw them both in the gym. And then once they've been in the gym, it was like, well, here's The Rock's going to wrestle Eddie Guerrero this week to prove that he can do anything. Brock's going to batter some mug because he can just squash anybody. You can treat those two wrestlers the exact same way. You can run Becky Lynch against all of Raw's mid-card for a few weeks. You can have Asuka squash jobbers and then just use training vignettes and similar sit-down stuff.
Isn't it funny how effective the training vignette is in actually putting athletes over on pro wrestling TV? It's incredible. Like the Cole Gargano stuff was amazing. It really put them over as like guys with conditioning, the likes of which you've never seen. Over in AEW the other week, we had Jungle Boy doing a fabulous training montage against Chris Jericho, which really put him over, like humanized him as a character, which is quite sort of like niche and bantery, that really helped to put him over. I think that pitch is fantastic. What do you think, Nicholas?
I think there's so much in those little vignettes. And think about the Cole Gargano, the Prime Target one. Not only did that show you how, like, the both guys in preparation for the match, but it gave you a bit of narrative in terms of, like, the first time around, Cole was so clinically focused. And we watched the changing of the seasons. He's walking around in the snow, training his backside off. Gargano's shaking hands and kissing babies and doing all that. And it's the perfect Rocky tale we spoke about at the time. Like, if they can do anything remotely like that with Becky Lynch and Asuka, it's perfect. The only thing I would say is, you kind of wish the Royal Rumble was like next week.
I know.
Because we say
this every time
we had
as
this
well.
with Ronda and Becky, where in the end we look back at it and say this was fantastic, but actually week by week they were slowly trying to kill it by accident, obviously, because I guess they just see the more is more. But we need something that's it's good, but not right in your face. And I realise as I say that sentence, who are we dealing with?
You're on a WWE podcast.
Yeah. It's subtraction by addition, this story, isn't it? It can only be reduced the more they throw at it, especially if you're insisting on putting them in front of live crowds every week. What they've got in Becky and Asuka as well is a situation where they could still put them against each other in dark matches for the live crowds. So the live crowds are losing nothing by not seeing Becky and Asuka on the show.
But then how will the Fiend be part of it? Where's the room for the Fiend?
I stopped asking that question back in October, Nicholas. That's all right.
How will we do the video about when the Fiend comes out and has a match again?
Maybe the other characters should talk about the Fiend when the Fiend's not there.
I do think it's an inspired idea because it gets over the idea that Becky Lynch has obviously got way more duties as the face of the company. Beyond just being in the ring, whereas Asuka, who's got a more limited focus, could just be focused on training. So not only is she's
not even got a tag commitment at the moment.
Yeah, that's the thing. Not only has she got like not as many or any real like sort of outside of the ring commitments, but she's already got Becky Lynch's number. So not only is Asuka better like right now in storylines than Becky Lynch, but she's more focused. I think that could really inform the drama. So I really do look forward to some comical misinterpretations of Becky Lynch's English-speaking promos a la Naomi. Right.
Becky crashes the wedding.
Indeed. Oh my God. One last question, and it's
Asuka
more
officiates the wedding is the one, isn't it?
And in lieu of an actual preview on WWE.com, the script is probably in its first of several drafts as we speak. A gentleman's bet. How many squash matches are we going to see on Raw tonight? And the more pertinent question is, are they actually working? Because this is the new structure of the show that we should really be delving into.
I'll go 3. And yeah, I think they are actually. I can see one for the Authors of Pain. I can see one for Rowan. And to go along with what I've just said, I'll say Asuka maybe just decks somebody. But I like them. I think the cool thing about a squash on Raw is that there is no attempt on WWE's part to give the opponent that shine. This is not one of them NXT squashes where you get a really enjoyable 4-minute match. Somebody is absolutely battering somebody else. And when it's normally giants or it's guys with big impact on move like Aleister Black, there's a lot to be said. I think James Ellsworth changed the game for the type of job they were looking for, and the jobbers thought about that when they were kind of like working that role. No longer is it about maximising your minutes as Jim Ross would want you to and turn up like Gene Snitsky with a massive physique. It's about looking as daft as possible and taking the best bumps. It's certainly helped Rowan's cause in the past few weeks, that daft cage. So yeah, I'm kind of in favour of it actually. It's a bit of a breath of fresh air on these long 3-hour slogs as well.
Indeed.
It's not perfect, but it does seem to do what they want, doesn't it? The squash match formula. I think I'm going to go less. I'm going to go maybe 2 this week, but only because I wonder if we're going to maybe start moving towards possibly a Joe and Owens alliance to take on the Authors of Pain, perhaps as a response to last week. But I'm not against them. I think there's a little bit of tweaking maybe to do, and I guess the more we get it, the more laborious it's going to become. But it's all right, isn't it? It's better than getting some sort of terrible long 20-minute promo for nothing, I guess.
Indeed. A lot of the things that I dislike about Raw in its 3-hour era, we're like 8 years deep into it right now, is that so many matches unnecessarily go 50-50 and it's completely muddled the idea of what a tiered roster should be. We've seen so many matches, like even recently something like Andrade versus Sin Cara went 10 minutes, which is about 7 minutes too long, given where they want each performer to be. They've even released Sin Cara. So what did they accomplish? Like less than nothing. I think the strategy they've taken so far with this renewed squash match era thing is very, very WWE. They've done like 1 too many on each show, and it kind of defeats the object where you're meant to receive like 2 people at a time, really at a push. It's like the breakthrough killers of their respective divisions. And because it's been about 4 or 5 or even 6 or whatever, it's sort of like, right, okay, well, the message is being very confused. I think it did a great deal for the Viking Raiders to be like squashing guys week in, week out, because their finish looks like almost reckless. Like, it isn't because they're great, but it looks reckless. As you point out, the Goobers taking it look very much like Goobers. And I think beyond the actual disaster that was the Viking Experience name change, they've quietly really got over.
I think something that's happening like right now, and I don't think this is planned by WWE, I think it's dumb luck, but this is a good time of year to be having these types of squashes, because a problem they've had in several rumbles of the recent past is that you've got one winner nailed on and then a load of like kind of secondary and tertiary candidates. The more squashes you've got, the more people before January before the date of the rumble itself, you make believable contenders to actually win the thing, because you've got the likes of, and again I go back to Rowan, this cage thing to me personally is absolutely absurd and will impede him getting over to a top level rather than if he
it's a master stroke, but carry on.
But I think he'll be somebody in time for the Royal Rumble. Do you know what I mean? I think he'll be a contender. He'll be a guy that could like have a bit of a diesel run and throw out 3 or 4 guys and look strong before, say, a bigger, stronger guy throws them out. And it doesn't hurt them to have these contenders like in a queue, or have people, fair enough, you might have your very tippy top guys like a Roman Reigns. Yes, you would fancy him to win. But then to have, say, a string of 7 or 8 realistic guys that you fancy to have good runs does well for them coming out the back of the Rumble. It sets them off for something good for WrestleMania, or at very least the Elimination Chambers.
Indeed. I really hope it works, because I'm sick of the silence that's cloaking Raw every week. And I think if you look at the Paul Heyman era in totality, we've had a few Guy the Goat Garbutt disasters. But recently, it's trying to refine itself, and it's really trying to build for the long term. And I think it's done quite an admirable job. And yet, the volume still isn't picking up. They're giving us reason, quietly and in patches, to actually trust in the process. If you look at the wildcard era and the revival burials, it's such a more focused show, trying to build itself for the long term, and yet that volume isn't sort of consistent with the attempts that they're trying to do.
It's being helped by how dreadful SmackDown is as well, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
it's shining a greater light on Raw, even looking slightly more organised as a wrestling show. Like, more of the characters on Raw feel focused, and we were told from October that this was going to be the B brand, decidedly so, and it doesn't really feel like that to me.
Oh, not at all. SmackDown's the B show. Absolutely. That's what happens when you book dog food bollocks.
You really love that dog food angle, don't you? It's one of the popular. I think
It gives me nihilism. But
as discussed literally on the news today. I think the good thing here is that this is like a weird byproduct of the Wednesday Night Wars that's been going on. Obviously, they can't be bringing up guys from NXT anymore. Just bring them up, do nothing with, and ultimately they end up plugging that gap. So it kind of protects them. The guys who we've got now are being fed all these jobbers for like the squash matches. It's good because I guess, they used Seth Rollins as guys, didn't they, the last week from his academy, so kind of brings more talent in that way. And ultimately, I think, yes, it's not great that 3 or 4 or 5 of them are all being built up at the same time, but it's better than them going against each other, going 50-50 or whatever, and nobody getting any further forward. So what I'm basically saying is, the Wednesday Night War is to thank for everything. And, NXT and AEW are literally the best thing. And it's helping out Monday Night Raw, if only they could help us SmackDown somehow.
is AEW the best wrestling company ever?
No.
Yeah, of course it is. Yes. Of course, New Japan runs a close second, but AEW is just the best.
We got there on a Raw preview, everybody. Yeah. We did get there. We got to the wrestling we like.
There we go.
Bingo. If you hated what I've just said, let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. And if you prefer the audio podcast, but look at these faces, why would you want to do that? But if you're inclined to do that, make sure to subscribe on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. You can also interact with us on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE. You can follow Adam Nicholas at
It's Adam Nicholas.
You can follow Michael Hamflet at
Michael Hamflet.
You should follow me at Sidgwick. Not that these guys are bad. I'm just trying to get over my...
I think that was a tacit burial. We got the point.
He's tried.
I don't think it was.
He's got a shovel under the
The shovel man.
We're all great. We're all great.
Shovel man.
This is off the rails. I tried really hard to do an Adam Wilborn-esque professional outro. It's failed miserably. And on that note, I will just do my stupid Orange Cassidy gimmick thing that I'm hoping gets more gifts. What's your problem?